Welcome to Success, Love, and Fulfillment Secrets, the place where you discover powerful distinctions to spiral your life upwards.
Soraya has an incredible amount of wisdom and discernment.
The results that I've been having, they've been amazing. I've been blown away, having a better state of mind.
I've been able to turn my marriage around. I've been able to find direction in my professional life.
My name is Soraya Altana. I am a life designer, and I am here to inspire you to design a life you love.
Now I know where I'm going, what do I want. My results are being outstanding. Happy for the experience and happy for the results, and I'm happy.
Working with Soraya will move your life forward in ways that you don't even realize.
I have a sense of hope, and I can become the leader that I want to become with my family and with my business.
Ready? Let's discover your secret of the day.
Hi, this is Soraya Altana, and I am so excited that we are here today because I have a very special guest with us, and we have a fun topic to talk about. And this is my friend from a long time ago, is Becky Henderson.
Mm-hmm.
She is an MALPC transformation coach, and we've shared so many things in different cities, even different continents, and we've had so much fun, right? And she has served since 1996 with people through advanced human performance and development. She helps entrepreneurs, executives, leaders, and creatives accelerate their lives and contribution, working with individuals as well as teams. You can build your kingdom and have all of your life thrive. And she helps you create extraordinary. So you can glean from her today, and she is awesome. So we're on the same line of work. We want you to create a life that you love. Becky, I am so excited that you are here with us today.
Thank you, Soraya. I love being here. I love being with you.
Well, I am very excited, and I'm going to tell you something about Becky. She is this amazing individual. She's an awesome woman. To me, Becky is a definition of fun put together. She creates laughter wherever she goes, and every time that I spend time with her, she uplifts you just by who she is, by the way she shows up. She is very down to earth and very fun to be with. But overall, what I love about her is how she makes people feel. She is very embracing of all. She recently got married, and she has the funnest, most amazing story of how she met her husband, which is what has triggered all this conversation. And her wedding was the funnest wedding. I think it was the wedding that I've been where there's been more laughter, and that's what makes her an amazing girl amongst many other things. So,
well, we had the funnest guests. So,
well, that's
I have to give credit where credit is due on that.
Definitely that too, right? That plays a part. So I'm glad that you're here today because we have the fun topic of online dating. And I don't know where you are. You're probably married. You're probably divorced. You're probably a widow or self-widow or single. And this is a topic that I find many people today are having issues with, are having polarized ideas and feelings about this topic. And so I want to ask you, Becky, what is your take on online dating?
So online dating, I think, is an incredibly useful tool. And just like any other tool or instrument, it can be used masterfully. It can also be used very ineptly and even causing hurt and harm, to others when it's misused or abused. And the tool in and of itself, I think, holds the potential, holds the possibility to do great and wonderful things. And in the hands of someone with less than honorable intentions, they can do a lot of damage with it as well. But I think what I have found fascinating with online dating is that on the side of how wonderful it can be is this capacity to connect people in a way that they just would not have connected otherwise. There are no social connections already in place between them. They don't frequent the same faith communities or stores or restaurants or have the same hobbies. Like I said, their social groups aren't already commingling, and so there's someone who can be a really incredible life partner, and yet the way that each other's lives are organized so far, there's no place for them to actually connect. It's just one miss after another. So I think in that regard, it has brought about a dynamic in human dating and mating that just hasn't existed before. Because before, everything was pretty geographically or socially limited to what you already had in your normal everyday life.
Yes. And one of the things that comes up for me is you and I come from the era that we got to see both worlds, right? And
Right.
when you're growing up, it's like you're thinking you're going to be, especially for women, if you're women listening to this, or men, I know we think differently, but for women, we have this idea of many times the Disney princesses, right? Like you're going to grow up and find the Prince Charming, and you're going to be married and have kids and live for happily ever after. And so we came from the old world where, like you say, it was more socially connection, it was proximity, it was who you know and where you met. So you had to physically in a way connect, unless you were Indian or another culture. But if you're
Right.
otherwise,
Right.
otherwise you had to be introduced to somebody or meet them at a place, at a wedding, coincide pretty much. So I want to ask you in that regard, when you were little in the old world, the pre-internet era, we're kind of dating ourselves here, right? So what did you think when you were growing up and you think about the concept of marriage, sharing your life with somebody? What were your thoughts around that growing up?
Well, so growing up, I actually was pretty independent. And growing up in this particular age, I'm a child of the 80s. So a female in the 80s in the United States, we got a lot more options than had it been the 1940s or 50s in terms of even considering maybe I don't get married. Do I want to get married? I don't know. And so I would say growing up, that question was very real for me. And it was even into getting into college. I wasn't sure if I wanted to get married. I mean, I knew that I enjoyed companionship and I knew I really liked guys. And I knew that's the other thing that was different in our generation, maybe than in a couple generations prior, that dating had become its own thing. Like you date for the sake of dating rather than dating with the express purpose of getting married. And so that was a major shift that I grew up with culturally, socially as well. And so, sure, I knew I enjoyed dating. Dating was great. I wasn't sure if I wanted to get married because of my limited ideas around what marriage could or would look like, and I was pretty adamant that I wanted to marry. I wanted an equitable relationship. That doesn't mean we all do the same thing all the time, but I wanted a relationship of mutual respect and decision making. And at least in the subculture that I was growing up in, I didn't see a lot of that for the women that got married. So I wasn't sold on the idea of marriage at a young age. I was questioning it for sure.
So with that, what were some of the challenges that you saw on the journey when it came to the whole concept of dating or marriage?
Well, I'll give you a couple examples. So when I was in college, and at the time, that's right when the internet was starting to literally come online, and email, and so the world of online dating did not exist yet. And that era of being in college, that was my target rich environment, right, of potential mates. And I remember, there being all these messages of, if you don't find someone in college, you're probably never going to find them. Well, what I experienced in college, I went to a conservative Christian university, and I actually had a very good friend of mine, a guy friend, very good friend. He said, I can see why men might hesitate to want to date you. And I was like, well, why? And he wasn't trying to be a jerk. He was just trying to give me some feedback. And I received it as such. And he said, because you require a lot. I was like, what? I'm high maintenance? He goes, no, you're not high maintenance, but who you are requires a man to step up and give everything that he is. A guy can't be with you and be a slacker. And I could see why that intimidates guys, because they can't get away with that sort of, I think he said, being half-ass, with you. You require him to show up in his full self, and that can translate as a lot of work to some men.
So that was a compliment. And
yeah. And I received it as such, and I said, absolutely, because of who I am. And he was acknowledging that I am someone that's going to give and bring all of me to the relationship. And that's the kind of partner that I am looking for in return. And so my experience in dating was kind of being aware of that at a young age, young as in my early 20s, that maybe the kind of guy that I was best suited for and was best suited for me, that he wasn't going to be average, which translated into, he's not going to be average, he's not going to be ordinary. There may not be large numbers of them running around on the planet. So it actually, for me, it set up, I didn't realize it at the time, it set up a scarcity mindset regarding the kind of guy that I wanted to be with.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, this is quite different, your story from mine. Because mine, I grew up with stories that, as we're going to be coming into a women's retreat this weekend, one of the things that I share with these women is my own story. I grew up thinking, watching my dad not give me the attention that I solicited and that I wanted, but giving it to my brother. And I started to have questioning myself, why was that? And what was different about my brother and me? And in the story, to make it short, I started asking, what is wrong with me? And because I didn't have that. And through the time, I would not get into relationship with men because I would think, my dad left when I was 3. I would think men leave. So why would I get into a relationship with them? So that's an entire different ball game than you when you're saying, I am it and you need to step up. And I am having men not really approach me, or the ones that I wanted, because I felt I am not good enough. And that's quite the opposite of the spectrum. So it's quite interesting what you're saying, because I didn't know that about you. Right?
Mm-hmm. Well, but in connection with what you just said, even though I recognized, yes, I'm going to bring all of me to a relationship, it left me with the impression Christian men don't want me, because I wanted a Christian man, right? But knowing how I was showing up in the world and the kind of relationship that I was looking for, I started perceiving early on that what the Christian men were looking for was a different kind of woman than me. Wow. So there was that. There wasn't necessarily a sense of what's wrong with me, but just that who I am is not what they're looking for.
Right.
And that was my mantra for a really long time. Christian men don't like me. Christian men don't like me. So I go to church, I can't get a date. I work at a ministry, I can't get a date. But you know what? I can go sit at Starbucks and I've got men left and right asking me out. But I can't get a single Christian man to have any kind of interest in me. There must be something inherently different between the kind of woman I am and the kind of women that, they are interested in creating, a life partnership with. And that was some of the stuff that had to shift in a major way before I started having the kind of relationships that I wanted to have. But those were some of the experiences that I drew on that shaped those kinds of what I call my context for dating was being informed and shaped by those early experiences.
Yeah, very true. So, and that when you start thinking at this time and said, I really want to date, and you're sharing, man, what were some of the struggles throughout? What were some of the challenges that you found on the world of dating in general?
So here was a big one, and it really took me some time to get clarity around what was going on. But I would say, so after I came through college, I had reached a point where I said, yes, I do want marriage. So it's not enough to just go on date after date or have a boyfriend. I actually desire a relationship that is going to transition into, excuse me, it's going to transition into lifelong commitment and partnership. And particularly when I started online dating, I was in this series of relationships where, so I would meet a guy and he'd want a date, even to the point of being exclusive. And I'm like, okay, great. And I was upfront. I was always upfront. I am looking, for marriage. And I found myself getting in relationships with guys who said they wanted marriage, or at least were interested in marriage, and then they wouldn't take it beyond dating. And after that happened 3 or 4 times, I had to ask myself, what is it about me that is open to dating these men that don't want to actually marry me? What is going on here? And then just after sitting with that question, I realized I am open to dating men who are not damn sure that they are going to get married. They're ambiguous about it. They're unsure about it. They're uncertain about it. And I thought, well, what if I just make a commitment to only date men that's their intention too. That's their highest priority too, is that they are looking for a wife. How about I only date those kind of men? And it was in short order it was from there, the only relationships that I entertained were men that absolutely wanted to marry me. It was a matter of me making up my mind of whether I wanted to marry them.
Yeah, that's very interesting what you're saying, because I remember that time in my life when I didn't feel good enough. And what I noticed after the fact, now that I've been on this journey of self-discovery, of personal development, and learning more about me, one of the things I realized is that I would get in proximity with men that were not emotionally available. Since I have that belief of men leave, then these men couldn't leave because they were not there in the first place.
Right.
So it's quite powerful how we bring into a frame of reference our stories and what happened with us, and how we're our own interpretation of the world. So, well, thanks for sharing that. And so, what did you, when you were going through this, what were some of the things that you tried, and what did you not try? And when you're looking at saying, I'm committed to finding somebody, a mate, somebody to share my journey in life with.
Well, things that I tried. So certainly I tried online dating, and I was really open to the process. So just because I didn't find my lifelong love in my first 3-month membership, that didn't translate that, oh, it'll never happen. So one of the things was I was just really open to, I'd meet someone, and if it didn't work out, I'd get back online. Maybe I'd give it a break. That was another thing. I was not an online junkie, or even so one of the things I did not do was I was not on 5 or 6 dating sites at the same time. Some people do that. I don't know if it works for them or not. But I was on one, and that was it. I mean, like, this thing is like a full-time job. So having to vet and look through profiles. I mean, if you really are doing this for a life partnership rather than just having someone take you out on a Friday night, then there's vetting involved. There is, actually investing in how I present myself online. And so I was willing to take a look at my profile from time to time and say, okay, do I need to adjust things? How is this coming across? Other things I did was I put up pictures that I felt were really expressive of me in like the full spectrum. So everything from fun and adventurous and travel and hobbies to professional and relational and family. And so I just showed what was important to me, in addition to writing about it in the profile. Another thing that I did in addition to online, the other thing was really keeping an open heart to, I can find love anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like online dating was my lifeline and it was never going to happen any other way. It was always staying open to, I can find love anywhere. So being a part of my faith community at church and being open to maybe there's someone there, or even specifically, I approached a handful of men and women that I knew and trusted and said, look, you guys know me. You know what I'm looking for as far as a spouse. And I would ask, number one, would you be willing to pray for me in that regard? But number two, would you be open to actually intentionally thinking about who you know that might be a candidate? And would you be willing to make an introduction? So I had a couple people, take me up on that. Made some friends out of it, but it didn't go further. But really inviting other people into the process with me rather than just going it alone. Which for me, my tendency is to just do it on my own. That's how I've lived, and so it was a stretching and growing process to invite other people in and keep them updated on what was happening and to welcome their inputs into something that is so incredibly private. But then the other thing, and I think this was that I tried, was I continued to get ruthlessly clear about number one, who I was committed to being in a relationship, and then number two, what that man might be like, while still remaining open to, what he might bring things into the relationship that I just can't even fathom at this point. But I had to get really clear on what are the essentials. Some people call those the deal breakers. I just said, these are the essential things that will be there in the kind of man that I desire to partner my life with. And not from a place of force, but just from a place of being resolute, like this is just how it's going to be. And when he shows up, I'll recognize him. And anyone who's not at least this, he's just not it.
So you have an ability to screen, which many women do, many men do. I certainly do. I have this, I can relate, and thank you for saying that, because sometimes I think I am very resolute as well. I bought my house within a 2-week period of time from the first time I saw it online to where there was already money on the table, because I know what I want, I know when I see it, and so it's going through all the things that, and in this case, all the people that you're saying, no, it just does not quite. Do I want to settle for something that I am not 100% convinced? And I already walked that bridge, and I already went to the island and left the island. So I certainly understand that yes, that's what you, that's a very strong, powerful place to come from, to be so clear on what you want. And that's something that to me, watching you throughout the years was something that bewildered me, because I saw, man, I mean, you were living in
I
Italy,
was.
with all these amazing, phenomenal men. I remember you and I walking one day from the area of the Spanish Steps all the way through Piazza Navona and
Yep.
through places, and going to a bus stop. And I was amazed that in our short walk, or however, probably a mile that we did, we were stopped by in a intermittent 11 men throughout, having conversations with us, inviting us, and saying, so I would think is, and I remember in the town that you were in, Frascati,
Uh-huh.
when we would come out at night, and then I was experiencing culture shock of having men sit 2 millimeters away from me, having a conversation next to me. And I was thinking, how does Becky do it with all these descendants of the Romans, and you being still saying, no, I know what I want, that one of these amazing, romantic, and also very insistent Italians, and you still
Uh-huh.
keep your cool and say, no, you are not what I want, and still not giving in. So that to me speaks not only of your standards, but in the clarity that you have of what you want.
Yeah, and I think that really plays a big impact on one, your capacity to say no to a lesser version. Because if you don't know what you want, then anything could look inviting. But for me, it was kind of like, yeah, I know I want a Porsche. So that Toyota Camry, just not doing it for me. And it might be fun to take it for a spin, right? But so it really comes back to being very, very clear on what it is that I want. And I got to tell you, as a coach, this is the fundamental question that most people struggle with, whether it's for a relationship, for quality of life, for their work, where they want to go on vacation. The question, what do you want?
Mm-hmm.
So many people haven't done the work to get clear on that, because it does take work. We have so many options, and especially, so this is going back to the dynamics that the online dating experience has created. It has created endless options.
Yeah.
And so it's real easy to, I mean, depending on the app that you're using, swipe, whichever way, people
Yeah.
people swipe. It's so easy to just cast people out of your life because, oh, next, and we never really take the time to invest and go deep, because there's always another option out there.
Yeah.
And yeah, when you get very clear on what you want, then the options don't become a distraction, because you'll cue in and you'll resonate with the thing that aligns with the person that aligns with the characteristics, the qualities, and not just the characteristics and qualities about that person, but what does it feel like to be with them? What is the experience that I want to have in partnership? That was something else that I got really clear on, is what do I want our life together to be like, look like, feel like, smell like, taste like what is that dynamic of what the two of us are like together, that so that makes it very different than, oh, here's my checklist of all the things that he needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much wrapped up in, who do I need to be in relationship with who I desire him to be, and who are we together?
And one of the things that you're saying is so key. And I've asked myself this, because one of the dynamics that online dating brings is do we believe, or I ask for myself, in love at 10th sight, or love at first sight? Because Because if 93% of communication is nothing but verbal, when you're relegated to text or to the initial, is having to judge people by the binary
Mm-hmm.
and circles and whatever, how much what am we missing? Because sometimes I think I don't even know the sound of the man this voice man, right? And then sometimes I was just saying it in another podcast, is he might have spelled something wrong and then it's like next, swipe left, next.
Mm-hmm.
Because what you're saying is this shallowness of, we're not really getting to know people, we're getting to know faces. But we might cross these people on the street, we might have talked to them at an event, at a party, at a network place, and we don't even know it, because it's this very plain kind of
Mm-hmm.
version of person
Mm-hmm.
versus the
Yeah.
three-dimensional of this. And
Right.
something that inspired me about you is your story. So on that, I like to, if you could tell us, Becky, in a short snippet, your awesome story, and then I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about that. What made it successful? So take it away.
Okay. So let me, context is a big deal in my world. So let me give you a little context to understand what happened in my husband and I finding one another. And it goes back to about a year or about 9 months before we actually met. I had a shift in, again, another major shift in how I was perceiving dating. And I realized it just didn't have to be a struggle. And I'm not going to go into the details of how that came about. But once I decided that I was no longer going to struggle with dating, and that I was going to allow it to be easy, fun, filled with joy, at that point, I made a commitment to myself. There was just this alignment that said, okay, so this was like in July of last year. At that point, so we've moved forward a few months. It's now about 6 months before I meet my husband. And so it's July of last year. And I said, I will be married by June 2019. So I said in July 2018, I said I will be married by June 2019. Wasn't dating anyone, didn't even have any prospective, online dates set up. And I just said, I'll be married by June 2019. And so I had made this shift into this could actually be easy and fun. And then what began to happen as I continued to do online dating, I would meet someone and I would quickly assess, no, they're not it. And so in the past, I would have stuck around and let's try to make this work. And I'm not talking about for superficial reasons. I'm talking about for those essentials where I was like, maybe I can bend a little bit on this. And it was like, no, I'm just going to not do that anymore. So I actually started quickly moving through relationships that were not working. It was just really clear. These will not work for the kind of relationship that I'm committed to having. And not because this guy is wrong, not because I'm wrong. It's just that what he wants in relationship is other than what I want. And neither one of us should have to compromise about this. And so I started to quickly move through the people that I was actually meeting. And, rather than struggling along trying to make something work for 3 or 4 months, I'd make the call after 2 or 3 dates, enough time to really get clear on what does this person value and where's their life going. And if there wasn't alignment, I was no longer in a place to continue to struggle with that. I was like, no, this doesn't serve either one of us. So we're going to say goodbye here. And then within 6 months of dating at that level of clarity and intentionality, my husband and I met online, and it just so happened that it was at Christmas holiday time. I was out of state visiting family, and I'm in Austin, Texas. He was in Austin when we connected, and he said, uh, I said to him, because there was so much alignment in his profile with what I was looking for, he had initially contacted me, and I replied with, I think we could probably talk for hours. And he replied by asking me out on a date, and I said, well, that's going to be a long commute. I'm several states away from you right now. How about a phone call? And we got on the phone that night, and we talked for 3.5 hours. And in that very first call, we both agreed that we were both looking for marriage. And how about we get intentional? How about we be intentional with discovering whether we're it for one another or not? Let's focus our conversation on the things that will elicit and surface whether we're a fit. And we both said yes. And then we continued to talk on the phone every day for 10 days, anywhere from 3 to 5 hours at a time. And this was all happening late at night because I was up to visit family, and there was no way they were going to allow me to be on the phone during family time. And so after I'd say goodnight to all the family around 10, 11 o'clock at night, then my husband and I would get on the phone and just talk to the early morning hours. And then we had our first dates. Well, I'll say this. Halfway through, he was already sure that I was it. And this was in the midst of him. He was continuing, because as online dating goes, you can be dating and getting to know several people all at once. And so in the midst of our conversations, he had already had 3 or 4 different dates set up with other women. Like they were already on the books. They were already scheduled. And he continued to go. And it was this very strange dynamic because, at this point I'm getting to know this guy, and I'm starting to develop like a genuine care, like a friend for him. And so we'd get on the phone, and after his date, and I'd say, so how did it go? And it was this tension. Like, I want him to have had a good time, and yet I want him to have had a terrible time. I didn't want him to enjoy this other woman. But as it went, he was falling hard, and 5 days in, he had already decided that I was it. And I told him, I said, look, I'm not making any declarations until you and I get face to face. And if we have face to face what we're experiencing on the phone, yeah, it'll happen in very short order. And that's exactly what happened. We had our first date the night that I got back into Austin, which was December 29th. And by December 30th, we looked at each other and said, let's do this. So we got busy planning a wedding.
And so the order of events actually happened in a non-fashionable way. And some of the things that struck me, because we had a conversation about this, which was really what triggered having this podcast in the first place, was saying what made it successful, what made it very grounded, and finding out that compatibility for both of you, because dating, especially online, many people, well, first of all, they're not serious, but then the ones that are, like I said, you don't really give a chance because it's so easy, and you said it's endless options, and you're always thinking that there's more and there's more. So we're not really getting to know people depth. And I speak about me because I'm so clear that I'm easier to just say nope. So what I saw, and I really learned from you, and I gathered from you, is what one key to your success, and what you've been saying is you were so specific in your profile, right? That when you knew that the man that you wanted to attract, who would read it and identify himself with that description. And that was very eye-opening for me, because I spoke to your husband, and he said, well, what made it very enticing for me about Becky was the fact that she was not having a Christmas list of what she wanted in a man. And he said, I find all these women putting on a list. This is what you got to do, and this is this
Mm-hmm.
you are, and this is my shopping list, if you will. And he said, but she was clever, and she was enticing when she put her description. So I want to ask you, how did you come up with this? You already explained a little bit, but what is it that you did that really ended up drawing him and letting many other fish out of the net?
Right. And I don't remember who it was that I heard this from, but it was someone who was speaking to the online dating market. And this was years ago. And I believe it was a man. And he said something to the effect of, take a look at your profile and imagine what it would be like to be on the receiving end of that profile. And rather than having this shopping list of requirements, paint a picture of the life that you desire with this other person. So rather than it being a list of requirements, it's a profile of possibility. What this would look like for us together. And what I took away from that is, sure, I need to have some basic things in there about the kind of man that I'm looking for. But that was maybe 5% of like those essential non-negotiables. That was like 5% in there. Everything else was who I will be for him. And this is the most incredible life that I would imagine for us, and I just started painting a vivid picture of different scenarios that incorporated my values
Mm-hmm.
as if this sounds good to you, like if a man that values what I value is like, that's going to be an enticing offer, to hear of what it might be like for us to travel together, and what it must, what that day-to-day life of health or spending time with friends or going dancing. So rather than it coming across as these are all the things you must do and be for me, it was, this is my ideal life. How does that sound to you?
I think this is key. What you planted, the way you created it, then it allowed for him to show up and say, yes, that's me, and yes, and that drew me also to see it because by the time that I got a wedding invitation and I got a story, there were missing dots in between. You come to meet somebody so quick and decide that yes, this is your partner. That was the goal, right? So that was a very eye-opening, like I said, because it was not just, how do you know? And I'm sure many people were raising eyebrows of, what do you mean you just met somebody and you're going to marry them?
In answering the question, how do you know? There's a very real dynamic in that, especially with online dating. People can lie face to face. People can lie. And when you put a profile out there about what you're looking for, someone who has, maybe less than honorable motives can take a look at that and go, okay, I can show up like that,
Right.
at least for a little while. And so one of the things that I was very intentional to do was, while everything in my profile was accurate, I did not put everything I was looking for in my profile. I left some very key characteristics not mentioned at all, because I wanted to see in my experience with him, would he show up as these 3 or 4 other things that were just as essential to me, but without having any, I called it, I didn't want to contaminate the experiment. So when I was on the phone with him, I said, yeah, there's actually 3 or 4 things that I've been paying attention to in our conversations. And yeah, I'm not ready to tell you what they are yet. We'll see.
Whoa, you gave him food for a few days to keep routing and seeing what was that.
Yeah. And I just said, look, I'm not going to contaminate the experiment. I want to see if this is in you already. Is this already a part of how you live? Is this already a part of what's important to you? without having any kind of prompting from me.
Mm-hmm.
So that was important.
Yeah. So they wouldn't follow a script.
Right. In terms of that, how do you know? The other thing, though, that I think is really important here is that because my journey of getting clear on who I was looking for and the kind of relationship I was looking for, because it was so crystal clear, once that man showed up, I didn't need to deliberate. And I think so many people, we get caught in this, well, I got to keep thinking, I got to keep thinking, I got to keep thinking. We call it the analysis paralysis, right? Our decision, they call it the valley of decision, and we miss out on opportunity because we're still trying to decide. I had already decided what my husband was going to be like. I had already decided what it was going to feel like and be like with him. So that once that man showed up, like the real deal, the authentic, like bank tellers, they're so attuned to being able to spot counterfeit money because they train on real money, real money, real money. When a counterfeit comes along, like they're able to recognize it. Well, the reverse is true. It's like I was going through that place of just I was able to recognize the counterfeits because I was so clear in myself of what the legitimate, authentic experience was going to be like, that when he showed up, there just was no more deliberation. It was just choose. And that's what we did.
Well, and it turned out into an amazing story that we have years to see develop and create funness and everything that you bring to the table, which I am excited. And Becky, to wrap up our conversation, what advice would you give to people that are into dating, in modern dating, online dating? What would you say to them?
The two things that made the biggest difference for me, and so I would pass that on to anyone who, it may be helpful for you, is getting really clear on who you are and what you want. Because if you can't answer those two questions, who am I and what do I want? Who do I want to be in relationship? What kind of relationship do I want? What kind of partner do I want? If you can't answer that, then that's where you'll be tossed around, and moving from one direction to the next. That's where you'll be left being uncertain in terms of, well, is this the right one? Well, is this so it keeps you from being in this place of knowing it's the right one because you've done the background work to be able to recognize that he's the right one. If you find yourself continuing to struggle, it's because you have not done the work to recognize when the right one comes along. So you got to do that, both for yourself and for the kind of person you want to be with. And I would just say the second thing would be to create a mindset that you are in this process, that this process can actually be joyful, that it can be fun, that it can be done with ease. That doesn't mean that you don't invest or actually work, at creating something beautiful, but that sense that dating has to be hard and a struggle and unfair and it never works out for you. All of that mindset is just creating more of that in your experience. So you've got to be able to shift out of that, create a new mindset, create a new context, that dating actually is enjoyable, fun, easy, possible, and then it can happen quickly. And then you'll start to see that in your experience.
That's pretty awesome. And maybe we can do another episode of what to do and not to do when online dating.
We could do that.
Yay.
I will, as much of that as I can be useful for. I'm glad to help.
Well, we got the experience. I love seeing you and your husband coming together, because I've seen you throughout the years, and I've seen this
Mhm.
amazing woman. I've seen the Italian men melting over you, and it's still you're cool and saying, no, I'm not gonna go, I'm not gonna marry you, because you were so clear as you've been saying it. And yes, that's the number one thing where, as coaches, we started being so clear on what you want and how you say and who you are, what you want to offer, what you want to create. So thank you for that. And any closing remarks that you want to do, Becky?
Yes. My closing remark, this is even more foundational than the other two things that I mentioned, is certainly if anyone who has not yet done this, generates a kind, compassionate, loving relationship with yourself first.
Okay.
Because that will set the template for how you experience your relationship in love and partnership with a spouse. And so that would be, I would say, if that's missing, if that has not yet come into its maturity in your life, keep investing in a loving relationship with yourself.
Well, we're definitely doing another episode where we're talking about the what to do's and not to do's. And if you're a woman and you haven't invested that kind relationship with yourself, I'm going to invite you to come to one of my retreats where we take care of that. That's a whole part of the retreat, is doing that for you, is falling in love with you, with the woman in the mirror, and learning to be tender and loving towards you. So thank you so much for that, Becky. And
Absolutely. Go to Soraya's retreat.
yeah, your life will be transformed. That's my promise. So if you want to reach Becky, you want to text Becky, BECKY, to 33733, or visit BeckyHenderson.com, and you can start a conversation with her if you want to learn more about her. She's an awesome woman. She's an awesome coach, and she has helped me through the ages, through time, by who she is, by her inspiration, by her wisdom. So it's that she's great. So Becky, I want to thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, Soraya.
And if you're listening and you have not subscribed to this channel, then I'm going to invite you to do so, because there's so much great stuff and content coming to you almost every day, and you want to look forward to that, because this is stuff that's to spiral your life upwards and to design a life you love. So have a great afternoon, and thank you for being here with us. We'll see you in our
Bye.
next Ciao. Bye.
Thank you for being here today. Find out what opportunities are available for you to start designing a life you love now by checking out the links. I look forward to connecting with you and seeing you live your best life yet. Hugs.